Hi, I'm Dahlia, and today we're going to be reading the Moon Book. As the sun sets at the end of each day, the sky becomes darker and darker. On many clear nights, our moon shines brightly in the night sky. Our moon is the brightest and biggest light in our night sky. It outshines all the stars and planets, which appear as small as points of lights. Some planets have moons. Earth has one. Our moon looks big and bright because it is so close to the Earth compared to the faraway stars and planets. It's about 238,9,000 miles away. The moon makes no light of its own to shine. It is bright in the night sky because it reflects the sun's light. It is about 1/4 the size of Earth. It is made up of rock and dust. There is no air or sign of life. Most astronomers and other scientists think our moon formed about 4.5 billion years ago. Some believe something collided with Earth that tossed out a cloud of rock and debris. While orbiting around Earth, the rock and debris came back to form the moon. In ancient times, people thought the moon was a powerful god or goddess. The Romans called their moon goddess Diana. In Greece, the moon goddess was Selene, who rode through the sky in a silver chariot. Some American Indian tribes believed the moon and sun were brother and sister gods. Stories and legends were told about the shapes and shadows that show on the moon's surface. Some people said that the moon showed a man's face, the man in the moon, who was imprisoned there for stealing. Others told of the moon demons living there. The moon is Earth's only natural satellite. It takes about 1 month for the moon to travel around the Earth. The moon makes one complete rotation for each complete trip around Earth. Thus, the same side of the moon is always facing Earth. The moon appears to change shape, but it doesn't. The different shapes we see are called phases of the moon. We are seeing different amounts of light being reflected on the moon. How much light we see depends on the position of the Earth, moon, and sun. During the new moon, the moon is almost directly between the sun and the Earth. The moon looks dark. We see no reflected light. In a few days, a bit of the sunlight sides of the moon shows. It forms a crescent. When the moon is a quarter of the way around Earth, it is in its first quarter phase. We see it as half lit. It is sometimes called a half moon. When the moon is waxing between a first quarter moon and a full moon, it's called a gibbous moon. About 2 weeks have passed since the new moon. Now, the entire face of the moon we see shines. The moon is waning when the lit surface we see is getting smaller. When the moon is waning between a full moon and a last quarter moon, it is a gibbous moon once again. When the moon is 3/4 of its way around Earth, it is in its last quarter phase. Again, we see it as half lit. It is sometimes called a half moon. Once again, we see a small sliver of the moon shining in the sky. It takes the moon about 1 month to go through its entire set of phases. People used to know the time of the month just by watching the moon phases. The moon's orbit around Earth is usually tilted slightly compared to the Earth's orbit around the sun. Because of this, the moon cannot exactly line up between the sun and the Earth. When the moon's orbit is not tilted and the moon lines up exactly between the sun and the Earth, a solar eclipse happens. The moon's shadow falls on Earth. A solar eclipse can last up to 7.5 months. Warning, never look directly at a solar eclipse. The sun's rays can hurt your eyes. When the sun, Earth, and moon are exactly lined up, a lunar eclipse happens. As in a solar eclipse, the moon's orbit is not tilted. Earth blocks off the sunlight that usually lights up the moon. The moon has a reddish glow. Lunar comes from luna, the Latin word for moon. A lunar eclipse can last up to 3.5 hours. The moon affects the oceans too. The moon's pull, called gravity, on the ocean is strong enough to cause tides. Tides are the daily rising and falling of the ocean's waters. This is because the moon takes about 25 hours to come back to the same place in the sky it was the night before. Tide differences vary around the world. Some night sky gazers and astronomers can get a close-up look of the moon by looking through binoculars. Others look through telescopes. Some huge telescopes are used at observatories. A close-up view of the moon's surface shows dark patches astronomers call plains or seas. Other areas are covered with craters, mountains, and valleys. The moon's craters were formed between 3.5 and 4.5 billion years ago when meteors pounded its surface. For centuries, people have wanted to know more about our moon. In 1959, the Soviet spacecraft Luna 3 transmitted to the Earth's first pictures of the far side, or back of the moon. There aren't as many dark areas on that side as the one on the side from the Earth we see. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy made a commitment to put Americans on the moon before the end of the decade. At first, many Americans' unmanned spacecraft were sent. Pictures were taken. Then, Surveyor 1 landed on the moon in 1966. It sent back information about the moon's surface. The first manned orbit of the moon was made by Apollo 8 astronomers in 1969.